Since the dawn of history, countless civilizations have risen, flourished and vanished, leaving behind not only ruins but also mysteries. This iceberg explores lost cultures. Some were powers whose names were heard across the world, others are but vain traces that barely touch the realm of history. As we descend, facts will become rather uncertain, and mysteries denser, so I will specify when one isn't confirmed as a full-fledged civilization. The Sumerians, often the subject of memes about a certain copper merchant and a peculiar mythological character, were, in fact, responsible for the first fully confirmed civilization in history. They flourished in southern Mesopotamia, in what is now Iraq and Kuwait, from the 4th millennium BC, with city-states like Uruk, Ur, and Lagash. Each one of these had wonderful temples, some built on step platforms called ziggurats, administrative systems, and major technological innovations. Their legacy is immense. They invented cuneiform writing, the earliest known solid wheel, the sexagesimal system, which is the base of 60 for the time and angles, complex irrigation systems, written laws, sailboats, and much more. Many of their inventions are on screen right now. They revolutionized trade, organized religion, engineering, medicine, and even music, being pioneers in nearly every aspect of civilized life. Writing allowed them to record transactions, laws, and literature, including the earliest tales of Enmerkar, Lugalbanda, and Gilgamesh. Their irrigation system turned seemingly barren lands into fertile farmland, and their lunar calendar inspired the Babylonian one, which shares roughly 80% of the structure of our modern Gregorian calendar. In short, without Sumer, many of the cornerstones of both the ancient and the modern world would have taken much longer to appear. Though well documented, Sumerian civilization is still partially mysterious. The ethnic or linguistic origins of its core population are still uncertain, and genetic studies suggest a mix of largely local populations with significant input from unknown regions. Moreover, cities such as Uruk reached high complexity surprisingly fast, and their astronomy and tales of gods who came from the sky continue to cause debate, fueling conspiracy theories. If you've ever heard about the Anunnaki, which is the name of the Sumerian divine pantheon, there is a 90% chance it was in the context of alien theories. Their mysterious origin has inspired pseudoscience, both Eurocentric and Afrocentric. In fact, the theories about the Anunnaki have a Eurocentric touch, since many have been inclined to believe, oh, how could brown people have built and discovered all of this, having the first civilization? It must have been some external force, right? But no, they really did it themselves. They were the first to transform human experience into written history, marking the leap from prehistory to human history itself. The Hittites emerged in central Anatolia around the 18th century BC, forming an empire that expanded into Syria and parts of Mesopotamia, becoming the rivals of the Egyptian, Mitanni, and Babylonian empires. Their military and diplomatic power was remarkable, and they signed the first known peace treaty, the one of Kadesh, with Egypt. They were masters of metallurgy, builders of fortresses, walled cities, and temples, and developers of an advanced legal and administrative system. They were the first civilization of the Iron Age, using the iron systematically 200 years before the Bronze Age itself ended. Their religion was the most polytheistic in history, at least confirmed, boasting between 1,000 and 2,000 gods, as they were the first major tolerant faith. It was the only pantheon that would have comfortably added the gods Zeus and Yahweh to its collection. The Hittite language made them into the first Indo-European civilization. It was rediscovered and deciphered only in the 20th century, revealing details about their society, but many of their cities and archives remain undiscovered. The swift disappearance and absorption of the Hittite Empire by neighboring peoples leave open questions about how such a powerful empire faded almost without a trace. Carthage arose in the 9th century BC in what is now Tunisia, founded by Phoenician settlers from Tyre. From its humble beginnings as a trading outpost, the city grew into a maritime and commercial superpower, a thalassocracy dominating the western Mediterranean. Its economy was based on navigation, trading metals, textiles, oil, wine and salt, and control over strategic routes between Sicily, Sardinia, the Iberian Peninsula, and North Africa. They developed advanced fleets, naval warfare tactics, and a network of alliances with local peoples and other Phoenician colonies, models later emulated by other cultures, and they also stood out for their impressive architecture and fortifications. And not least, they had one of the most brilliant strategic minds of the ancient world, Hannibal Barca. Yeah, the guy who marched his army across the Alps, including elephants, and wiped out between 33 and 44% of the Roman soldiers of the time. Although of course, he didn't take into account that he was outnumbered 2 to 1 or even more, and ended up defeated by another of the most brilliant strategic minds of his time. The greatest mystery of Carthage lies in its origins and meteoric rise. Not only do we not know exactly how it was founded, but there is also the question of how did a colony become a rival empire to Rome in such a short period of time. Thing is, their original written records were almost entirely lost because of the Roman destruction of their city, maybe even deliberately destroyed by the Romans as post-mortem censorship. As a result, most of what we know comes from Roman sources, which often exaggerated their negative traits or even made them up to justify their annihilation. If you've ever heard the phrase, "history is written by the victors," this is one of the most accurate examples. There is no consensus about their human sacrifices, which remain debated among modern historians. It is unclear whether they occasionally sacrificed adults or did so en masse. The remains of children appear to belong to those consecrated after dying from illness to ensure the future in the afterlife rather than sacrifice. But of course, Rome attributed everything to sacrifice for propaganda. Despite its physical destruction, Carthage advanced navigation, trade, and Mediterranean diplomacy, leaving a legacy that endured in both Greco-Roman and North African civilization. Babylonia flourished in the heart of Mesopotamia along the Euphrates River from 1894 BC. It became a major political, economic and cultural center under kings such as Hammurabi and Shamshu-Iluna. Its legacy includes the codification of laws, most famously the Code of Hammurabi, advances in astronomy and mathematics, monumental architecture with ziggurats and gardens, and the development of a centralized and efficient administration. Babylon was also a literary and religious hub, with temples dedicated to Marduk and complex rituals that influenced later cultures. Although much of its history is documented, the fall of Babylon remains surrounded by questions. It was conquered by the Persians under Cyrus the Great, but it is unclear whether its collapse was only due to direct military conquest or a more complex process of political and social reorganization. Another mystery is the true location of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Some historians debate whether they were actually located in Babylon or in Assyria, since ancient writers often confuse the cities of the two. Then there is the Tower of Babel in Babylon, which was called Babel in Imperial Aramaic, the lingua franca of his empire during the Uruk captivity. It was most likely inspired by the Enki, which was as tall as 90 meters. For comparison, a 100-meter building today is considered a skyscraper. It was the tallest structure in the ancient world after the pyramids of Giza until the 3rd century BC, when the lighthouse of Alexandria was built. Even so, Babylon left an extraordinary cultural and scientific legacy, profoundly shaping the laws, architecture, astronomy, and literature of the world at the time. You may be wondering, what is Persia doing in here? What's mysterious about the Achaemenid Persia? Well, the only real question that we have about them is how was such a magnificent civilization even possible more than 2.5 millennia ago? Cyrus the Great conquered without destroying the culture of his enemies, conceived ideas that we now recognize as human rights long before the term even existed, respected the religions of his peoples, and created an empire that spanned nearly all known civilizations of the planet at the time, from the Mediterranean to the Indus, controlling between 35 and 45% of the population of the world. Persia achieved greatness in architecture, engineering, irrigation systems, trade routes, literature, and philosophy, in virtually every domain. And Cyrus, well, let's say he's the only historical figure respected alike by Jews, Christians, Muslims, agnostics, atheists, Buddhists, and even Hinduists, all of whom consider him as a role model. If one were to assemble hundreds of people in a global senate, Zoroastrians, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and non-believers alike, to decide who should be the emperor of mankind, they will most likely choose Cyrus the Great. No one will object. Justice, power, human rights. But when the war times come around, Cyrus will step aside, for when it came to sheer military genius, Alexander of Macedon was the ultimate leader. After all, we don't call him Alexander the Made, but rather the Great, and for very good reasons. His greatest feat was actually defeating the Persian Empire. In regards to the social, Cyrus the Great was unmatched, but in regards to the swords, Alexandros was supreme in more ways than one. The Minoan civilization flourished in the island of Crete in what is now Greece during the Bronze Age, between roughly 1900 and 1100 BC, making it technically the first civilization in the whole continent of Europe, and also the mother of the Greek civilization. Monumental palaces, such as those of Knossos, featured drainage systems, running water, and paved streets, showing an advanced level of urban planning and architecture for the time. The Minoan art, with its vibrant frescoes depicting nature, bull-leaping rituals, idolatry of women, and female totems, show a refined artistic culture, and according to some scholars, a religious structure centered on the feminine or matriarchal, though it was possibly egalitarian, which is impressively socially advanced for the time anyway. They also excelled in maritime trade across the Mediterranean, developed highly decorated pottery, also suspiciously similar to later Greek styles, and extended their cultural influence to the Aegean Islands and mainland Greece. One of the enduring mysteries surrounding the Minoans is their language. They used an early writing system known as Linear A, the precursor to Greek Linear B, which remains undeciphered. This prevents us from knowing much about their political structure, religion, or literature. After a socio-economic peak around 1600 BC, their palaces were destroyed or burned in the mid-15th century BC, possibly due to invasions or natural catastrophes, such as the eruption of Thera, which is now called Santorini, which devastated much of their commercial fleet, but the exact relationship between these events remains debated. All of this, alongside many other reasons, made some believe that the Minoans might have inspired Plato's legend of Atlantis up to an extent. The fact that this remarkable first civilization in Europe yielded its cultural dominance to the Mycenaeans, also called Bronze Age Greeks, without a clear explanation of the process, adds yet another layer of mystery to the Minoan legacy. The Cucuteni Tripilia developed in Eastern Europe between roughly 5400 and 2700 BC, across modern-day Ukraine, Moldova, and Romania. This Neolithic culture built densely populated and carefully planned settlements. Some villages had up to 20,000 or even more inhabitants, arranged in circular or concentric patterns, showing a remarkable degree of early urban organization. They were skilled in agriculture, animal domestication, civilization and produced highly decorated red-orange pottery. They also crafted copper jewelry, an evidence of an advanced metallurgy for that time. Although some called them a civilization, they lacked more than half of the defining traits of a fully developed one, so we should rather call them an advanced culture. The reason they ritually burned their settlements every 60 to 80 years before rebuilding remains unclear. Was it a ritual of renewal, a response to soil exhaustion, wood decay, or a purely symbolic act? Though they were among the world's most advanced cultures of the time, their language, which was probably an Anatolian Neolithic language, is unknown, and they left no complex writing system, leaving their political and social structures shrouded in mystery. Finally, their decline around the mid-3rd millennium BC is uncertain. Were they absorbed by other populations, affected by climate change, migration, or a mix of factors? These enigmas make Cucuteni Tripilia a culture that resembles the concept of a lost civilization in European prehistory. Tartessos existed between the 9th and 6th centuries BC in southern Iberia, in what is now Huelva, Cádiz, and parts of the Guadalquivir Valley. It was a kingdom rich in metals, gold, silver, copper, and tin, and its strategic position between the Atlantic and Mediterranean made it a key hub for maritime trade. The Phoenicians, who called themselves Canaanites, and Greeks described it as a land of wealth and wisdom, and classical authors like Herodotus and Strabo wrote of prosperous cities with powerful rulers. Its cultural influence spread through trade with the eastern Mediterranean, yet Tartessos remained cloaked in mystery. The exact location of its capital and its political organizations are still unknown. Its language, Tartessian, written in the Phoenician alphabet, has only been partially deciphered, and the inscriptions found often raise more questions than answers. Some theories point to Carthaginian or Greek expansion being the cause of their disappearance, while others suggest natural disasters. Recent archaeological finds reveal complex structures and ritual spaces, suggesting that Tartessos might have had temples dedicated to its deities, a sign of a more sophisticated culture than it was perceived previously. Its reputation as a rich and advanced civilization endures in legends, some even linking it to Atlantis or tales of hidden treasures, making Tartessos one of the most mysterious and fascinating civilizations of ancient Europe. The Olmecs emerged along the Gulf Coast of Mexico and are considered the modern civilization of Mesoamerica, and for a good reason, since their urban centers in San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes show an advanced planning and monumental stone architecture, including the famous colossal heads, which are impressive for their time. They cultivated maize, beans, squash, and cacao, and maintained long-distance trade in jade, obsidian, shells, and rubber. Their art and religion, featuring human jaguar motifs and feline rituals, profoundly influenced later Mesoamerican cultures such as the Maya and Aztecs. The language and script are not fully deciphered. Their political organization is uncertain, and how they built such enormous monuments so early remains debated. Their disappearance might have been due to climate shifts, resource depletion, or migrations, though no consensus exists. Even so, their artistic, religious, and cultural legacy endures as the foundation of later Mesoamerican civilizations. The Muisca peoples inhabited the Altiplano Cundiboyacense, sorry if that doesn't ring a bell in English, in present-day Colombia between 600 and 1600 AD, as part of a larger Chibcha-speaking cultural family. Their social organization was complex. They maintained a dual chiefdom system with the Sipa ruling the south and the Sake ruling the north, while each community was interconnected through trade networks and political alliances. They were skilled agriculturalists, cultivating maize, potatoes, and cotton, and supplemented their diet with hunting and fishing. They also achieved exceptional goldsmithing, working with gold and tumbaga, a gold-copper alloy, to create ritual figures and offerings that reflected their spiritual worldview. The mystery surrounding the Muisca lies mainly, let's be honest, in their connection to the myth of El Dorado. The Sipa's ritual involved a man covering himself in gold dust and immersing in lake, Tuatha Vita. European misinterpretations of the ritual led to the legendary search for a golden city across all of South America, captivating historians, conquistadors, and treasure hunters for centuries, and raising questions about the true scale or even the meaning of those ceremonies. Another enigma is their Chibcha language, which was almost entirely lost. Their blend of myth, violent disappearance, and gold makes the Muisca civilization both tangible and enigmatic. The Mitanni, my favorite, arose in the 16th century BC in northern Mesopotamia, around the region of the Khabur River, extending across Syria, southeastern Turkey, and the north of Iraq. They ruled over a largely Hurrian population, extending across Syria, southeastern Turkey, and northern Iraq. They ruled over a largely Hurrian population, while their elite likely had a different origin. Despite being surrounded by powerful empires, those of the Hittites, the Egyptians, and the Babylonians, the Mitanni became a major military and diplomatic power. One of their greatest contributions was in military technology. They developed light spoke-wheeled chariots and produced the earliest known horse training manuals, such as the very first of them, attributed to Kikuli, as well as the first confirmed use of lamella or scale armor, the ancestor of Roman imperial armor, possibly even its invention. They also controlled key trade routes and turned that economic strength into diplomatic influence, arranging royal marriages with Egypt and participating in treaties and alliances. For example, Tutankhamun was partially of Mitanni descent, but 2 centuries later they were absorbed by Assyria under the name of Hani-Galbat. The great mystery of Mitanni lies in the origin of his elite and noble family, who spoke an Indo-Aryan language. Hittite archives contain a treaty where the Mitanni invoked Vedic deities like Indra, Varuna, Mitra, and the Nasatyas, all known from Indian sacred texts like the Vedas, suggesting an Indo-Aryan cultural layer atop of their Hurrian society. Even their technical manuals on horse training include words identical to Sanskrit, like Aika, Tera, Pansa, or Satta, reinforcing the presence of an Indo-Aryan substrate among the Mitanni. It remains unclear how this elite arrived in the region. The Mitanni had their Hurrian population speaking their local language in daily life, yet preserved Indo-Aryan names and rituals, becoming the second strongest superpower in the entire world during the 15th century BC. Many researchers see the Mitanni and Hurrians as ancestors of later groups, such as the Urartians, Armenians, and Kurds, and despite how awesome the Mitanni were, many questions remain unanswered. The ancient Nordic peoples are often stereotyped as barbaric, meat-headed Vikings, but Viking was merely an occupation, not a population, for the Nordic culture was way more than that. It flourished in Scandinavia from the Bronze Age to the Viking Age, marked by adaptation to cold climates, exploitation of marine and forest resources, and advanced seafaring. They developed ship-building techniques that enabled them to explore, trade, and even invade distant lands such as the British Isles, Iceland, Greenland, and North America. Keep in mind that the North Sea between Britain and Scandinavia is one of the most dangerous bodies of water on the planet. Even modern cargo ships struggle with it, so the Viking seafaring was no joke. Their society was organized into clans and communities with local leaders, but bound by law and codes of honor that maintained social cohesion. Women played a strong role in society, since men periodically left for voyages, and women often managed their settlements on their own. Although some called them a civilization, the Nordic peoples did not form a full civilization like Rome or Sumer. They lacked a fully functional writing system. Big cities, a centralized administration, complex economy, and standardized legal codification. Only from around around 1050 AD did the Nordic peoples fully integrate into Christian and Western civilization, becoming among the most devout of their religion. Just look at the Nordic flags, which uniquely preserve the proper form of the Christian cross, though the modern horizontal layout was not their decision. Their mysteries include their rich and intricate mythology, which blended history, astronomy, and legend, but it is unclear what portion of it was factual and which one wasn't. Their runic writing remains partially ambiguous, often misunderstood. Another enigma is the Viking expansion. How relatively small societies managed to control trade routes and settle distant lands with so few resources, founding large colonies like Dublin across the British Isles and even Finland, discovering America 500 years before Columbus. All of this makes the ancient Nordic peoples a proto-civilization not only incredible and fascinating, but also shrouded in a unique halo of mystery. The Norte Chico civilization, also known as Caral Supe, developed along the central coast of Peru between roughly 3200 and 1800 BC. They built large urban centers such as Caral, featuring ceremonial plazas, step pyramids and storage complexes, with no evidence of warfare, suggesting a relatively peaceful society focused on agriculture, fishing and trade. They cultivated cotton and squash and maintained trade networks reaching both the coastal and inland regions. The main mystery of Norte Chico lies in their writing system. They use quipus, a record-keeping method of knotted cords, but it is unclear whether these represented a full language or simply accounting records. It is unknown how such an advanced culture arose with no known external influence, raising questions about its origins and development. Although it is not considered a full civilization, Norte Chico stands closer to that definition than many others on this list, and some evidence even suggests it might have been civilized before Sumer, making it into a possible first civilization on Earth. Indeed, Peru is key. Their disappearance remains unexplained. Climate change, resource exhaustion, or social reorganization might have played a role. Norte Chico is fascinating because it combines civilizational achievements with a mystery that still challenges archaeology. The Nok culture developed in what is now central Nigeria between 1500 BC and 300 AD, and it is known for its carved terracotta figures, depicting humans and animals with a surprising level of detail and realism. Raised livestock and smelted iron, being the first society in sub-Saharan Africa to use advanced iron metallurgy before 1000 BC. Their settlements indicate a relatively complex social organization and the ability to sustain permanent communities. Despite having social hierarchy and specialization, they lack complex writing, which is why they are considered an advanced culture rather than a civilization. There is no consensus about the origin of the Nok or their disappearance. It is unknown how the culture emerged, who their ancestors were, or how their traditions of metalworking and art influenced later sub-Saharan societies. Some of their sculptures, which could reach large sizes, might have had ritual, political, or religious purposes, but the exact meaning remains unknown. The abrupt disappearance of the Nok culture around 300 AD adds another layer of enigma, turning them into one of Africa's most mysterious and fascinating proto-civilizations. The Mississippian culture flourished in what is now the south of the United States, particularly in the state of Mississippi, you're welcome, between 800 and 1600 AD, being the most advanced pre-Columbian culture north of the Aztecs. It is known for its enormous earthen mounds and tombs. Centers like Cahokia hosted tens of thousands of inhabitants, ceremonial plazas and sophisticated urban layouts, with trade routes that extended across the continent. Their economy combined intensive agriculture, maize, beans, squash, with fishing and hunting, and their society was organized into complex hierarchies of leaders, priests, and warriors. We still don't know the reason for the disappearance of their great urban centers before European arrival. They left no complex writing, making it difficult to reconstruct their history, and some of their rituals and structures appear to have astronomical significance, still not fully understood. Their cultural legacy technology, and impressive urban planning make them one of the most fascinating and enigmatic cultures of North America, particularly because, like the Nok, they seem to have been independent in origin. Tiwanaku flourished between 300 and 1000 AD on the Andean High Plateau near Lake Titicaca in what is now Bolivia. It was the center of one of the most important proto-civilizations of South America, with monumental architecture including the Kalasasaya Temple and the Gateway of the Sun, ceremonial platforms and stone temples all aligned with astronomical events, marking a clearly organized religion. Its political organization, religious beliefs and complex rituals remain largely unknown. If they had a form of writing, it has not been found, and the cause of their decline is uncertain. Some suggest climate change, prolonged droughts, or internal conflicts. Moreover, the magnitude and precision of their stonework, with blocks perfectly fitted without mortar, raise questions about their engineering knowledge and technology. Tiwanaku remains as both a symbol of cultural achievement and pre-Columbian enigma. Dilmun was a civilization and trading hub, probably located in what is now Bahrain and parts of the eastern Arabian coast, active from around 3000 BC to 600 BC. Its importance lay in controlling maritime routes between Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and Arabia, facilitating the trade of copper, pearls, incense, and other valuable goods of the ancient world. Dilmun's economy prospered thanks to its strategic position and access to natural resources, making it a center of regional wealth and power. The mystery of Dilmun is fascinating, although it appears in Mesopotamian texts as a paradise-like land associated with gods and myths. Its exact location, territorial extent, and political organization remain debated. It is unknown how this culture emerged or what caused it to disappear. Some studies point to changes in trade routes or environmental problems. Additionally, it's possible connection to later myths, such as the biblical Garden of Eden itself, makes it even more fascinating. The descriptions of Dilmun's fertility resemble the biblical Eden, since Sumerians described Dilmun as the living land where no one grows old, full of green fertile land. Some even believe that the name Eden could have been an adaptation of the name used by the inhabitants of Dilmun to refer to the homeland, but that's just a mere theory. This gives its existence a legendary aura, blending history and myth, making Dilmun into an enigma of both ancient trade and religion. The Mycenaean culture, or Bronze Age Greeks, developed in mainland Greece between 1600 and 1100 BC, succeeding the Minoan civilization and becoming the first true civilization of continental Europe around 1350 BC. It is notable for its robust palaces, tholos tombs, and cyclopean walls, since they were so massive that later Greeks believed they had been built by cyclopes. Centers such as Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos reveal a high level of administrative organization, with accounting records on clay tablets and a trade network connecting Crete, Anatolia, and the Eastern Mediterranean. The society was hierarchical, with warrior kings, specialized artisans, and an organized army, and their polytheistic religion obviously inspired the later Greek pantheon, although the Minoans gave them a big civilizational push. The mystery of the Mycenaeans includes the nature of their linear B script, descending from the Minoan linear A script, which has been partially deciphered but is still not fully understood. Same with the reasons for their collapse after 1200 BC, which may have been a direct consequence of invasions by the Sea Peoples, natural disasters, or internal strife. The combination of architecture, art, writing, and warfare makes the Mycenaeans a captivating civilization. Speaking about the devil, the Sea Peoples were groups that attacked and displaced several major civilizations of the Eastern Mediterranean between 1200 and 900 BC, heavily contributing to the disappearance of both Mycenaean and Hittite civilization, as well as weakening the Egyptian Empire, Canaan, and Babylon, being the main cause of the Bronze Age collapse, literally the end of an era. Their most emblematic trait is the mystery of their origin. We call them them sea peoples because we have no idea where the heck they came from. They might have come from the Aegean, Anatolia, the Black Sea, the islands around Italy, the Iberian Peninsula, or a mix of these regions. They are associated with mass migrations and abrupt cultural exchanges, and Egyptian records, such as those of Pharaoh Ramses III, depict their battles and conquests, yet reveal little about who they truly were. And of course, an utter enigma is their identity and motives. Some believe they were refugees displaced by climate crisis or internal conflicts. Others even theorize they were organized expansionist groups. Their language, social structure, and final fate after their raids remain uncertain. The combination of violence, sudden attacks, and almost as sudden disappearance makes the sea peoples one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world, a topic that continues to fascinate and torment archaeologists and historians alike. Even though all of these civilizations and cultures disappeared or collapsed, can we really say that everything has been lost? We still use minutes and seconds based on 60, angles too, calendars with 12 cycles, writing, laws, contracts, streets, plants, cities, irrigation system, coins, taxes, iron, glass, the furnace, seal, zinc. We even still use copper. Our civilization would have taken much longer to reach the level it's at today without all of their efforts. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the first part of the iceberg of lost civilizations, and we'll move on to the second one in a few weeks, where the next entries will be even more obscure. It's been a pleasure, as always. Ciao!